Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott. You are in the Prog Corner, where today we are simulcasting live on Prog Radio. It's the first time we've done this, so bear with us if there was any dead air or anything crazy like that. But today, in the Prog Corner, we are here to celebrate the rebirth of the great American prog band's debut album, For You, the Old Women. It's a 1976 classic that I absolutely adore. You clowns know how much I love this album, right? So I was absolutely stoked when George from PQR Discus Plus Coral. Oh, George, are you there? Can you help me out?
Yep. It was just about right. PQR Discus Plus Coral.
Okay. Thank you. We have George from the label here that is reissuing this album. It comes out May 1st on several different color gradients. I just couldn't be more excited to have in the house the one, the only John Vislocki III. John, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you, Scott.
Oh, man. Oh, man. He was the singer and the trumpet player for the band. For those of you that may not know this band like I do, sitting next to him in the same room, and that is kind of encouraging to me. It's none other than Simon Gannett. How do you pronounce your last name? I butchered your name a few times, I know, too.
You certainly have.
Welcome to the club.
It's Gannett. And Scott, it's a pleasure to be here, and we thank you so much for doing this.
And Simon, of course, the keyboard player for Mirthrandir, laying all those amazing different layers of atmospheric awesomeness to the band. But, you know, the guy that was laying it all down, and I was listening to it again this morning and just amazed at how good the drumming and conversation with Personality Giver is. It's none other than Bob Arase. Again, how do you pronounce your last name again? I know I'm butchering it.
Erase.
I am 3 for 3, ladies, and no 4 for 4 if you include George.
Growing up, even these guys here, it's usually Aris, but people misconstrue that for Harris. So I keep Erase, so phonetically people gets it.
Well, I don't remember calling you anything but other names, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, we won't want to talk about that.
So, you know, the business at hand today is the celebration of the reissue of one of my favorite albums of all time. It really is. I love it that much. How did, you know, before we get back in the time machine, how did you and PQR hook up for this reissue program? Did he contact you guys, or how did that go down? Because obviously somebody at PQR knows good music, man, because looking back at some of their reissue programs, it's just incredible, and you guys fit right in. But how did that all come about?
So Greg Walker contacted me and mentioned that George contacted him to see if they had the rights to the album, and he got George to get in touch with me.
Okay, now Greg Walker reissued this back in 1992, the CD version of it. George, what were you going to say?
I said it was love at first sight.
Yeah.
We're all really amazed and at the same time intimidated at the prospect of reissuing this album. And it works out real fine. And I'm sure these outstanding musicians will be able to explain the entire process they went through in order to record this testament.
Now, as you see in the comments there, Alan Benjamin is in the house. Can anybody here explain to me Alan's connection with Mirthrandir? I know he's a fellow New Jersey prog lover, a New Jersey guy that loves Gentle Giant. Did he or did he not play some gigs with you guys once?
Right. What happened was we went to put the group back together. Not all of the group wanted to do it or were geographically able to do it. So we had some friends, John Callahan, who was the other guitar player who played on the gigs with us. He knew Alan, and Alan had already been a fan of Mirthrandir. So once we got together, we knew it was the right fit.
Yeah, Alan, I don't know if any of you guys know, he is in a band called Advent. So figure out the Gentle Giant connection there, but just a fantastic band, really cool. But yeah, so I'm going to get to one of the first questions that I've got here, and I'm going to answer some of the ones, that come up live as we go. And Kevin on Prog Radio will be sending me any of the comments at the Listeners Lounge as we are live simulcasting this thing on Prog Radio today. Very excited. But here's my first question for whomever. This is just a basic question about your influences by ePaxX. I have no idea what that handle means, but ePaxX wants to know what your early influences were, before you formed the band. What kind of stuff were you listening to? That kind of thing. Whoever wants to answer that can take it.
Simon, you take that first.
Yeah, well, with me, it started watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I was 10 years old, and I was taking piano lessons probably a year before that. But once I heard the Beatles, it opened up new avenues for me. And then from there, anything with keyboards interested me. So, the Doors, Iron Butterfly especially, and Inagata-Davida just blew my mind the first time I heard that. Yeah, I was very young, right? That was great. Saw them in concert too locally.
Really?
And but what really did it for me, I think, to get into the prog world was sitting at a bar in Staten Island and hearing this song come on the jukebox. And it, make a long story longer, it turned out to be Lucky Man. And when I heard that synthesizer, that Moog, it changed my life. It really, really did. So that's pretty much
that was a different sound, right? I mean, up to that point, towards the end of the song, it was just a song we've heard dudes singing, strumming guitars before, and then that Moog solo comes in at the end, and it's like, what? John, you got any early influences that you can think about that you want to share with us?
Well, my parents, at age 9, like all the schools, encouraged you to play an instrument. So I started on trumpet. And then from there, I actually started playing drums. So early on, though, what got me to the vocals were hearing groups like the Rascals, hearing Motown, further than that, Three Dog Night. And then I really was a Mark Farner guy, playing drums and listening to his voice. That's what got me to the level of trying to be a vocalist. And then when I went to school in Berkeley, I finally got out from behind the drums and started the band up there, the lead singing. And so I went into that transition.
Yeah, Berkeley will do it to you. And I think we do have a question from somebody later on about some of your musical training. But before I go to Robert on this, Jeff Schilk on the live stream wants to know, and I guess I'm going to direct this at Simon, Emerson or Wakeman?
Are you kidding? Both. Come on. How can I compare? I mean, they're both incredible. I mean, initially it was Emerson until I heard, Close to the Edge and that kind of stuff. And both. So I
just heard a quote that Keith Emerson once said, if you take my left hand and Rick Wakeman's right hand, you would have the perfect keyboard player. So I think that's the right answer there. Robert, what were you listening to when you were just a little pup?
Oh boy, I could just give you 5 drum influences, the top 5 that I could really dig into. The first one was Jimmy Fox from the James Gang. Second was Don Brewer.
Yeah.
Third
was singing drummers, right? Yeah.
Who was it? No, Buddy Rich. No, Buddy Rich was a little bit beyond my comprehension. And in the prog world, of course, Phil Collins, and then Bill Bruford. They were the main ones that I kind of followed them and their style and tried to, incorporate their style sort of together. And I think I might have accomplished that. I wouldn't be the one to know, but they were very influential on me. And also, who could forget John Bonham? I mean, everybody playing drums in the 70s was influenced by him. So those are those are the 5 that put me on the map, so to speak. And it's evolved pretty much since then. There's so many others, but those really set the tone for me.
And Bob, I got to say, you know, with that background, your style was completely unique for me. I mean, I've never ever experienced anything like it. When you came on board the band, it just, I mean, it blew us all away. You know,
it is a different, very unique approach. Yeah, I can't, like, a lot of times you listen to a band and like, yeah, that guy sounds like this guy or he sounds like that guy.
Right.
I really can't pin down what you're doing there, brother. I really can't. It's so awesome, man.
Take all those 5 and put them in a blender.
Yeah,
You might come up with it.
Now, here's one from Terry Walker, one of my connoisseur members. You know, you can become a member of the Prog Corner for as little as $1.99 a month. And Terry Walker's taking advantage of that. And he has a question. So, of course, I'm going to ask it. Why did you guys split up after just one album? Was it the time? Was it the lack of you know, what you thought might happen afterwards? Or was it just like life taking over? We'll start with you, Bob, and then we'll go up to John and Simon. What's your take? What happened after the album and the ultimate demise of the band?
I think we got caught in the gears of the disco era, so to speak, a new change in what people were looking towards. And I mean, Simon or John could tell you some of the record companies that we went to that turned us down because we weren't at that, I guess, popularity. And I mean, I don't remember us being extremely discouraged. We realized that, you know, we were at the end sort of the prog stuff, not really because, you know, Genesis went on, Yes went on and all this, but we were first there and probably last.
Yeah.
But it was the time and the, you know, what was coming out to be popular, and we just got caught up in that.
Yeah, timing for sure, I think, would be a big part of it. Before I ask the same question to John and Simon, Bill Bruford or Alan White?
Wow. You know what? I might have the same answer as Simon, but they're two totally different styles.
Yeah.
Bill Bruford is like such a strict, hard-hitting, to the point, and Alan White has so many great drum fills that he goes around the drums with, and he's more proficient than I think Bruford is. But I mean, they're both incredible. I mean, when I listen to Tales of Topographic Oceans, I'm like, how does he do that? You know, it's not the simple beat that Bill Bruford is known for, that sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a mix.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. So John, Simon, what happened? Why'd you guys break up? What's the deal?
Well, first of all, it wasn't because of
But they were with a record company.
disagreements or anything like that. Like, we couldn't decide on what to do next, or, you know, there were still a lot of ideas floating around that didn't get completed, actually. But yeah, again, like Bob said, it was the time. You know, we had went to a few different record companies, and Simon can expound on that. But we just kind of knew, you know, we put so much effort. We practiced 5 nights a week, and we would just put so much effort into it. And when it just kind of petered out, it was difficult, and it was hard to regain that energy again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's time.
Yeah. So, you know, we were rehearsing all the time. You know, our first show was our biggest show.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody knew who we were. We actually got kids from local high schools to come up to our studio, our loft, to check out the band, because nobody knew. We had nothing at all. There was nobody knew about the band. Anyway, we filled the first theater. We did another show a year later or a few months later, and it went downhill from there. You know, we played some clubs and we couldn't draw. People didn't want to come. We were fired from most of the clubs that we played in. People were actually sitting on the floor listening to the band instead of going buying drinks, right? and we were bodily thrown out of more than one place. Really, it was crazy. And it just came to a point where we didn't know where to go. It was just we had no outlet at all.
Yeah.
Zero. And we just
without a label supporting you and guiding you and promoting you and assisting you in different ways, it had to be pretty hard to be in a prog band at that particular time in history. But I've got a question from a fan in Japan. ENs7, I'm assuming from Tokyo, is asking, if you're sitting in front of a drum set, John, Simon, I'm pretty sure your fingers still work. Bob is right up here. What is we got Alan in the peanut gallery. Sounds like we got enough manpower to put a second album together. What's the likelihood of that?
Well, there's a few reasons why that would be improbable. One being that Al he keeps to himself these days. And so we would certainly want his input because he was really the nexus of what occurred with Mirthrandir. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're all, and I know that technology supports this these days, but we're all in different places.
Yeah.
Simon's up north, I'm down south, Bob's down south in a different place. So, and that it'd be difficult. What I do think could happen, and this is me just talking, we probably could get together and do a few shows if it was right. If there, how do I say, if the venues were asking for that. There's enough of us that we know that we could put together where we could do a show or two, but it'd have to be worth it to to get together into the same state and put all that together. But as far as new material, I don't see that happening. That's my personal opinion.
And you talk about being in the same place. It's not just being in the same place geographically, because like you said, with new technology, that's easily fixable. But you got to be in the same place, the same space in your life to be, doing that kind of stuff for sure. I just want to remind everybody that we are live on Prog Radio. So if you're tuning in on Prog Radio and wondering why in the world are you listening to the Prog Corner, we are simulcasting this event live. So this is really, really exciting. And I got another question here from one of my subscribers. Actually, another member of the Connoisseur Club is Bob Stoudemire, and he's asking, what's the connection with Tolkien? And is that or is that not a misspelling?
Yes, we heard it wrong, I think. So when we started the band, our first drummer, who lasted maybe 3 weeks, said, "Hey, I have a good name for the band, Mirthrandir." We weren't into Tolkien at the time. We didn't know. We heard it as Mirthrandir, and we kept it as Mirthrandir. It's as simple as that.
I think it sounds cool.
Yeah. Good thing you didn't get sued.
Yeah.
True that. You know how these people are now. Somebody was asking about unreleased material in the chat here just now, but I had a question from Warren Weinberg, who claims to be Rich's old roommate.
He was.
He wants to know what the deal is with the unreleased classic album Luna. Now, I've heard of Luna, but I don't know what Luna is. Was this like an aborted second album, or was this like a band that came after the heels of Mirthrandir? What's going on? Sounds like Warren's got the inside track here.
So he does. 1998, Al wrote a bunch of songs, and some of the original guys from Mirthrandir was asked to play on it. I was on it. Bob played, and some other folks, and it was really fun. And it was all Al stuff, and we just played his stuff. I loved it. We did it actually in his cellar on an 8-track cassette, analog cassette.
It's important to mention, Simon, also that before we got together, Al was always at Jim's house in his studio. And those two, just by themselves, were putting this little piece by piece music together.
Yeah.
And I remember he played something for me, and I went, wow, what do you want to do with this? And then I think that's when he got us together.
Is that Jim Miller we're referring to?
This is Jim Miller. Jim,
I just want to say to Jim Miller, his family, his friends, his loved ones, we lost him very, very recently, right?
Yes.
Yeah, about a month
A
ago.
month or so
Right.
ago, a little more.
What an amazing, amazing musician. Kind of the beating heart of Mirthrandir.
Yeah.
Really just one of those guys that just had it figured out musically. And a few years back, we lost Richard Excelente, Rich Exxon. He went by a million different names. This guy was born to be a rock star. Absolutely. No longer with us anymore, is he?
And it's really sad that these guys can't be here for this,
Yeah,
especially
they
Jim, because
would've
it was
loved
so
it.
close to us doing
Oh,
this.
It would have been awesome. I know he would have had a good time with this whole thing, getting a little bit of attention. 48 years after, who would have thought 48 years after this record would be sitting here on opposite ends of the great American continent and across the world with George from PQR with us today. We're also simulcasting live on Prog Radio, boys and girls. I'm going to make sure I try to do these ID points occasionally because I am an idiot. And I do try to keep track of everything, but you know how it is. I got another question, and we kind of touched on this a little bit with John talking about Berkeley. We've got Marcus in the media asking about any musical training, formal training that you guys may have had prior to Mirthrandir's birth. And obviously, I want to start with John. You mentioned Berkeley. What was your experience like there? How long were you there? Did you like it? Did you learn anything?
Well, Berkeley was changed my life. It exposed me culturally to so many different types of music, not only jazz, but all types of music, really. And I went there as I wanted to go there as a trumpet major. My parents were like, no, you better go there and get your Bachelor of Education, so you're just not a musician and you've got something to lean back on, blah, blah, blah. But I went there and was exposed to so much different types of music. I stayed there for 3 semesters and got itchy, and I started a group of my own, which I was a lead vocalist in. And I had all Berkeley guys in the band, and we played pretty much the whole northeast sector, up Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and all that. So that was the training there. As far as vocals go, my parents were both singers on the operatic side, paid church singers. So, I always had that in the background to lean on. And as far as drums, I was self-taught on that. But that's basically my musical training.
Yeah.
Simon, you couldn't have just taught yourself all by your little lonesome. There had to have been like a little old piano teacher down the road that was slapping your wrist with a ruler every time your wrist got too low. Come on.
Well, my first piano teacher, I was 8 or 9, and we were doing all that. And he went to my mother, said, you know what? I don't think he really is into it. Right. But so he left. But I kept playing. I just kept noodling on the piano. So she got another teacher who I was with for 10 years. And this guy listened to what I needed, and he figured it out. And he threw in all the things that I needed, without me.
No, that's important. You bring up a good point.
Yeah.
The best teacher I ever had was the guy that was listening to the Who's Tommy the same exact time I was listening to it. Right. And, he would give me all the Pete Townsend transcriptions and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can actually figure it out now. This guy is listening to my music. Bob, what was your training? When did you start playing drums? Do you play any other instruments? What's your actual training?
Well, I could go back when it started, and it's not a long story, but I had my confirmation. I was Catholic, and my parents, I must have been around 12 years old. And my father's best friend, which we called Uncle Leo, he played drums in a 3-piece band. So back in the 60s and 70s, they were doing stuff like Wooly Bully at the local bars in Newark. So he was playing, and I'm just watching him in the middle of my event there. And I'm just thinking to myself, I could do that, I think. I know what he's doing. So I asked him, hey, can I sit on the drums when you're done? He goes, yeah, sure. So I started playing. Never had a drumstick in my life other than turkey. So I'm hitting them and I'm playing a beat. And then it just hit me. I said, wow, I think I can do this. So anyway, fast forward, I bought drum sets, cleaned them up, fixed them, sold them for more money. I was a little entrepreneurish. But I just practiced on a drum pad and drums. Like I just delved into rudiments just to get my hands even. And then I tried to play the things that I heard from these influenced drummers, and I tried to copy them from what I heard. And kind of that's where it was. I really didn't have any training. I mean, I remember picking up a drum book, and it showed rudiments. So I just took from there the rudiments that were available to learn.
There is nothing more exciting than talking about paradiddles on live radio.
Oh yeah,
I don't mean to stop you there, but I'm seeing the numbers kind of plummet there, Bob. So
you got to talk about flamdiddles too. Come on.
Yeah, I was going to say flamadiddles.
Hey, Ian LaBelle has a question for you guys, and it's one I probably should have asked Greg Walker, but why did we go with the different album cover with the 1992 reissue and it finally came out on CD? What was the thinking there? Or was there any thinking going on there? They just did it. What's your take on that?
Well, we couldn't afford color on the first album, right?
Yeah.
This is our baby, and we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
Now we had an opportunity to have a color cover. So, Al knew a friend of Al's was an artist, John Modzaleski, and he actually put together this incredible oil painting of a roller coaster. And we went to another artist that put that cover together, and we liked it. We said, you know what? We always equated our music to being on a roller coaster, right? It's just simple to simplify things, and we just like the work, and that's as simple as that.
I heard a story about Al doing some of his best writing on roller coasters and stuff. So
well, yeah, that's sort of like it. What would happen is that we'd be rehearsing, and we'd come to a dead spot, and we would say, okay, we get into Simon's van, and we'd roll over to Coney Island and go on the Cyclone. And that would regenerate us.
There you go.
And so that's how that kind of went. And then with regards to the roller coaster thing, Ali always used to say that the music is like being on a roller coaster. The first time you experience it, it's like, I don't get it. And then the second time, it's like, oh yeah, you can relax a little bit and then have it seep into you.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely accurate. Hey, we got a question from Jan Carey Perez wanting to know if you guys know about Gong, if you're hip to Gong, if you listen to Gong. Yeah, there, a lot of people, a lot of us here in the US, we don't know about, these weird French psychedelic prog bands. I love them, but Wayne from Pocket Full of Heat wanted to know if you could play with any musician, dead or alive, who would it be? I like that one.
Me, Chick Corea.
Ooh, Chick Corea.
Oh.
Nice.
Go ahead, Bob. I'm thinking.
Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah. If you could sit behind anybody, you got
this is something I've never thought of, but probably like a band like Chicago. I mean, let's get it all together. Let's add every instrument in the book there. Yeah. But I like a more,
and yeah,
I prefer my style. I prefer today to be more of a straightforward, like a guy like from Bad Company, Simon Kirk.
Kirk.
He's just solid.
Still doing it. I seen Simon a couple years ago. He's still playing.
And it's more about the sound of the drums and the feel for me. And that's kind of like where that would lead me to.
Yeah.
Like a Jeff Porcaro.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, he's phenomenal. That guy. He was one of my later idols, so to speak. It's a shame. But I always listened to Boz Scaggs, and I always said to myself, "Who is this drummer?"
Yeah,
and I find out it was him.
Yeah,
so he got around.
Yeah, like Steve Gadd, right? He just got around. Every time you heard him, it's like, who's behind the kid on this one? Simon, did you think of an answer?
Well, it's funny. There's a lot of people that I'd love to play with, but I would have loved to have been on stage at Woodstock with Santana.
Ooh.
Doing Soul Sacrifice.
Ooh.
That would have been the ultimate for me.
That's a good one.
He used to play that like to the numbers.
Yeah, it was. We did that, in some cover bands together. That was always fun. That was always fun.
Old Santana, just amazing
Oh,
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question from Julie from France, who goes by the name Julie Musique. So I guess I'm just assuming there's a French. She could be from Quebec. Who knows? She wants to know what's the story behind the name of the album, right? And I think that's probably one of you guys have probably heard a million times before, but it is kind of a weird name for an album. For you, The Old Women, what's the story behind it? And obviously, for those on Prog Radio, I apologize. You can't see me showing the album cover here. But yeah, I am showing the front and the back. I'm assuming it ties into the artwork. Who's got an answer for that one?
So basically, there was, in a different time, someone who gossiped a lot, okay, would be regarded as, you're old women. You're like the old women, just always gossiping. So basically, I think that a lot of what was on the album, mainly the For You, the Old Women, that particular track, would talk about that, in abstract terms, of course, but that's generally where it came from. Where people gossip about things or talk about things they don't know about, or, that whole realm.
Right. Also, I think as for people that are set in their ways and they're not interested in hearing something new or learning something new. And that, I think, was part of the thought behind that as well.
Kind of cool. I like it. I never had a problem with it, but we asked the question from Jan Carey Perez earlier in the live chat. We didn't have an answer for you. It's a good thing we've got a prepared question from her. Jan wants to know if there are any tracks off the album that you consider to be, particular favorites of yours. We all have our favorites, but it's different when it's your baby, right? Is there any track off the album that you particularly care for 48 years later?
Well, for me, I think 4/4 changed things for me. That, we did 3 pieces before that that were, challenging, but 4/4 was entered a new realm for us musically, and I really started to find my musical way with that song. So yeah, 4/4 has special meaning for me.
The Birth and Number 2, which I think are on the CD that's going to come out, were never released. So those are some demo tracks that sound half decent that people might enjoy. Some of that was written, pieces of it here and there, written when in high school with Al, and Jimmy and I used to jam a little bit. But I wasn't in Mirthrandir until after 4/4 had been written. So I was there for what we refer as number 5, or For You, the Old Women, which I really loved that tune. But my favorite tune is Conversation with the Personality Giver.
Yes, absolutely, man. That song is just awesome. I love that track, start to finish. It's the one that really gets me going, and it's the one that really kind of shows off Bob's drumming a little bit too. He sounds so good on that track.
Really, don't ask me my favorite one. I'm going to be partial.
Yeah,
of course it's that song.
Yeah,
that was the last song we recorded,
really,
or rehearsed for the album. And I don't need to come off, but I think I was at the top of my game at that time.
Sure.
And sometimes when I listen to it now, I go, I did that.
Yeah.
The song actually started from the drum fill I did in the beginning.
Right.
I was playing around with that, and Al goes, "Oh, wait a minute, add this," and it just went from there.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah, that song got written fast. Where Feel the Old Women, that song did not get written fast.
Really?
No, that took months.
Took months.
And that's interesting because honestly, I think those are the 2 most effective tracks on the album overall. And they came from totally different writing perspectives, right? One was like so easy, you wrote it in a day, and the other one took like months and months of laboring over it. Art is weird like that, man. You just never know. Zeb, we got one of my very, very good subscribers. We love you, Zeb, all the way from Norway, asking if there's anything in the archive, anything new. And I guess we can segue into, this packaging actually has a CD in it. You touched on it. What's the deal with this bonus material on the CD? Who wants to talk about it?
Well, I can start, but you guys can jump in. There's some live tracks on there that are rough. They really are rough. Yeah. But, George said, come on, that's okay. That's all right. We want to hear this stuff.
We do.
So it's absolute pure energy. It's so good that I would even recommend to Mirthrandir newcomer to begin with a bonus CD and then jump on with the album. It's such a fantastic performance. And it also demonstrates how vivid and energetic live shows in the 70s used to be compared to today. That most of there's definitely excellent music coming out, and live shows are far more professional, obviously, than they were in the 70s.
Sure.
But it's also the formulaic, and they tend they have the capacity to replicate new technologies very, very very easily. One of the drawbacks or new product or service development as well is that everything can be copied at a flash, so easily. But that was not the case back then. So people just, experimented on stage, and they were looking for that, magic moment when the audience would actually empathize with them on stage and, share the same feeling with one another. It was more of a convivial occasion rather than, let's say, a stage setting. And this is what, shines forth very forcefully, I think, in that bonus CD. And the same holds for other bands as well that we released, for example, Attitudes or Boo Boo. The shows that we released on live tracks on CD as bonus CDs demonstrates exactly the same dynamism and energy that used to dominate in the 70s.
And that is what we love about PQR. George, thank you for joining us on this historic live stream with Mirthrandir. We've got John Bislocki III. We've got Simon Gannett. We've got Bob Arrace, and I don't think I messed up anybody's name. That's just amazing. Andrew Hamer, who is really kind of a big shot with modern prog, right? He's one of those guys. He's on Facebook all the time. He's one of those movers and shakers, but he's got a question kind of apropos. He detects some religious undertones in some of these lyrics. What's the deal with that? Is he wrong there? Or was it just, lyrics that sounded cool? Or, is there something else going on here with some of these religious, mentions in the song lyrics?
Well, yeah, there were a couple of things here. So Light of the Candle was based on, the lyrics are based on a conversation that Al had in church with somebody that came up to him and said, by the way, I'm Jesus Christ. Well, it freaked Al out, so that's Light of the Candle. I mean, you listen to that, that's pretty much what that's about. Totally unrelated later on, in especially in conversation with Personality Giver. Richie brought this book in. It was called the Urantia book, which is a religious book, religious text of some sort. And Al, was just perusing through it and just said, yeah, it's pretty interesting. And a lot of those lyrics are pretty much based on that book. That's about as far as it went.
Yeah.
As far as
Simon, could you say who was that book written by?
I don't remember, but
it says it in the forward, if I remember.
What did it say? I don't remember, Bob. It's been
some
only
spiritual beings. They never mentioned a person, and it was kind of eerie to read that, knowing what you're reading is you don't know where it's coming from. Right. But
yeah,
it had an impact on Al.
It was intense, but it wasn't really our bag. But it was interesting. Let's put it that way.
That's cool. I knew there had to be some weird sideways answer to that one. And you guys didn't disappoint. That is for sure. Hey, Kevin from Prague Radio's got a question. I don't know if any of you guys feel like you're qualified to answer it or not, but he's asking, do you detect a renaissance in Prague? Going forward, here we are, 2024. Is there something going on here? Here we are, 48 years after we released that thing, so clearly something's going on, right? What do you think it is?
You know better than we do,
For sure.
Well, I think it's because of a person like you who's going to project that, really. And I said that when I first met you and talked to you. I said, let me tell you something. Before you were offered the position to do this interview, I've said to Simon and John, I said, Scott would be our best advocate because of the people you deal with that watch you and your enthusiasm. Number one, they all lack a bit of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have someone like George that is willing to put this stuff back out there, it's okay. So if maybe we can encourage some of the younger people to hear that.
That's right.
I think
personally, I'm not aware of a lot of the prog that's going on out there. I'm more of a jazz fusion guy, but I'm sure that there is some sort of something rotating, or this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah,
right.
There is, and streaming is a big part of it. I think somebody had a question about streaming services, and if at some point any of this will be available on streaming, George, is that a possibility?
What do you have in mind?
I've just had a few people asking about streaming services like Spotify and the like. If the album would be available on that type of a platform at some point.
Well, not really Spotify, because Spotify, I think, is more suitable for young and upcoming artists whose music has not been released so far. And that's the magic trick, so to speak, of Spotify, that you have the opportunity to be embedded in different playlists and to gain free publicity just because you're embedded in this, in multiple playlists. For Mirthrandir, I don't think, Mirthrandir is a niche progressive rock band, and their audience is split between an existing franchise, people who already know them and appreciate them, and of course newcomers to the genre, which is the actual pool we're trying to recruit with this reissue.
And you're right. They're probably not the ones, digesting every hip Spotify playlist that's coming down the pike. So we're not missing a whole lot there. I really don't think. But, I had a few people ask me that. Now, I did have a question that I was going to ask if nobody else asked it, but David Taylor was asking if you guys had any encounters with any other American prog bands, what I like to call Ameriprog, because there were a few, but they were like scattered all over the place. You had the Yezda Earthas and the Cathedrals. And, I want to apologize real quick to Fire Ballet, because I've been hyping this whole thing, saying that, Mirthrandir, the greatest prog band ever out of New Jersey. Well, let's give Fire Ballet some respect. I'm sorry. That was really rude of me. It was. So I'm sorry. But anyway, we're live here on Prog Radio with Mirthrandir, and I've just asked these guys about Ameriprog, and if you guys knew about any of these bands, the Happy the Mans, or any of them as you were doing Mirthrandir?
We knew of Fire Ballet. They're actually from our area, some of the guys from the same town. And Jim saw them in a band that was prior to Fire Ballet. It was a different name. And they're really good. We have heard of them. As a matter of fact, probably the only band I've ever heard of in that genre. We've never heard of any of the other bands. There was actually no circuit. There was no radio. There was nothing for us, to know of any other bands. It was very, very tight.
Bob, you knew Frank, or you knew of Frank, right?
Yeah, weren't they called Fireball Kids?
They were the Fireball Kids.
Yeah.
Before they were Fire Ballet.
And
before they turned into a prog.
Keyboard player's name was Frank Petto.
Frank Petto, yeah.
And I went to see them somewhere. I don't remember where it was. They did other music, but they did their own. They kind of had to mix it in, I guess, because they wouldn't draw an audience, as we know how that works.
Yeah, I think we do.
But I remember seeing them, and they were really, really good, really good.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
and anyway, personally, I didn't know the guy Frank, but I knew of him, and maybe had shook his hand or something, like, "Hey, how are you?" Whatever. Other than that, no.
Yeah. Interesting, because I've been talking about Mirthrandir and pointing people to you guys, and that's one thing that I hear a lot. Like, man, those guys, they had to have heard Happy the Man, or they had to have heard Cathedral, or that. And I'm like, I don't think so. Actually,
no, we didn't hear any of that. I mean, we heard obviously, yes, Genesis and PFM,
Hatfield,
like that,
things like that. Yeah.
And I mean, and it was always, there was Kansas. I mean, they were just starting back then.
Yeah.
Right.
I had interaction with Kansas at some point. I met those guys because actually when Steve Walsh left the group, I auditioned for them. They had me come to Atlanta and audition. They were great guys. Very nice.
It's on the booklet. Just a small parenthesis on John's memoirs. All this information, we spent quite a lot of time with Bob co-authoring this biography that is included in the first pages of the booklet insert on Mirthrandir's issue. So some of this information, you'll have the opportunity to read it quite thoroughly in the booklet.
Right. So you're not just getting a reissue of the 1970 masterpiece. You're getting it on really cool colored vinyl, splatter vinyl, or clear vinyl. You're getting a CD, a bonus CD with unreleased live material, and you're getting all that cool stuff, liner notes that George was just talking about. Absolutely, PQR doing some great work there. My colleague, I do a Sunday prog stream every Sunday on the Prog Corner, and my co-host is a guy named Wayne at A Pocket Full of Heap, and he's got a great question. Tomorrow our topic is going to be desert island discs, right? One desert island, one turntable, you're allowed to take 5 albums. Which 5 are you taking, John? And you're allowed to take 5 jazz fusion albums. We won't be mad at you.
I would take, let's see. I would take Selling England by the Pound. I would take Jeff Beck's Rough and Ready album.
Ooh.
I would take 2 Chick Corea albums, Where Have I Known You Before? And I forget, it was just called Return of Forever, but with Bill Connors instead of Al Di Meola.
Yeah.
And the 5th one, God, it would probably be Rascal's collection.
Wow. Simon, what do you got?
Oh man,
5 albums.
Oh man, Tarkus.
Yeah, we knew the keyboard player had to come out swinging.
Trilogy. I mean, I waited all summer. I guess it was 72, 73 for that album to come out. I was driving cross country, and I went to every damn record store. Is it out yet? Is it out yet? And when I heard it, it was
to
worth,
get Trilogy.
It was worth the wait. Yeah. Selling England is definitely there. Foxtrot. I mean, there's just so much.
You can take one more, man. One more.
Yeah.
Got one more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
Yeah. Nobody's taking any Yes.
Any of the first 4 Yes albums.
Yeah, Close to the Edge.
Close to the Edge.
There you go.
Good album.
Bob,
these are albums that we just.
one desert island, one lifetime, 5 albums. What are you going to live with?
Selling England by the Pound is, hands down. I mean, it's a natural. Then you have in the Yes category, I like Tales from Topographic Oceans.
Yes, my man. I knew I liked you, Bob.
Gentle Giant, Octopus.
Yeah. 5. Jesus. Can't stop there.
It's getting hard, but it has to be in the prog category, huh?
No, whatever you want to listen to, man.
Oh, geez. Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Phil Collins' stuff when he came out afterwards. A lot of people said, "Oh, that's not Genesis anymore."
But he's great.
No Jacket Required, hands down. I think is one of his best. He's a great songwriter too. Besides being one of the best drummers, he's a great songwriter.
He became a very good songwriter. It took him a little while.
The guy would every song he wrote was a hit, basically.
You know, it's hard to believe that out of our beloved genre sprang the biggest star of the 80s. It wasn't Prince. It wasn't Madonna. It wasn't Springsteen. If you add up all the top 40 hits that Phil Collins had either solo or with Genesis, it's Phil Collins, and it's not even close.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree.
Give the man his due.
And what a shame what's happened to him. Oh, that must be killing him inside. But
I guess
I'd
actually bought.
have to
I
throw
actually
UK in there
like-
too, man.
No Jacket Required. I just loved the sound of his snare drum, so I had to find out what it was and bought a Noble and Cooley custom made. I said I have to have it.
Yeah, I mean that drum sound,
Everything about him.
it's just incredible. And it was a group deal. You know, Hugh Padgham and Steve Lillywhite, and there was a whole lot of people that developed that 80s sound, that gated reverb drum sound that just is so emblematic of that whole time period. I'm going to take one more question from the peanut gallery, guys. We're going to try to keep this a real nice, tidy 60 minutes. For those people listening on Prog Radio, we've got exactly 60 minutes slotted, so we don't want to mess up with Kevin's programming over there on his radio station, since he was kind enough to agree to do the simulcast today, promoting the reissue of Mirthrandir and their 1976 masterpiece, For You, the Old Women. 3 of the original members of that band right here. So it's been an exciting day. But Jeff Shilka's got one final question for you, and that is Steve Howe or Steve Hackett?
I you know,
what's with these questions?
I love Hackett, man. I love Hackett. You know, I saw the band a few years back. It was just incredible. Just an incredible show. And I love Steve Howe too, but Hackett just does it for me.
Steve Howe for me. Yeah, I'm a Steve Howe fan.
I would have to agree with Simon, and the reason it put me over Steve Howe is, I don't know, Scott, if you've heard his live version with the orchestra of doing Firth of Fifth. I think I heard it 20 times. It's incredible. And it's just amazing. And I mean, Steve Howe, he's no backseat rider, but I just have a better feeling with Steve Hackett.
Yeah.
Now,
have any of you guys actually listened to the new Yes album that came out last year, Mirror to the Sky?
No.
It's primarily the Steve Howe band now. It's Steve Howe and Friends, I guess, pretty much. But, it's actually really good. He finally figured out a way to do it without John Anderson and not be terrible. So, that's one modern record that's totally worth listening to.
Yeah.
But I did have one further question from, just from my own personal curiosity and whatnot. Not only was the album cover different between the original 1976 and the 1992 CD reissue on symphonic courtesy of Greg Walker, but we had a different running order, didn't we?
Yeah.
So, what are we going with on the reissue?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
and
the album.
Why the difference in the first place?
I suggested to Al, maybe we should just start a little heavier, a little more upbeat. And he said, yeah, let's do that. And it was as simple as that. It wasn't a lot of thought behind it. I just thought maybe we could just start off with a bang. And I thought For You, the Old Women was a good.
You'd had 16 years to think about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the reissue is going to be what the album was, right?
Yes, it's the original
read on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of like both ways. I understand why, starting with the title track on the CD reissue certainly made sense. It's a little punchier, gets to where it's going a little quicker. But I don't know. The original track listing is just kind of creepy and weird. and it kind of ties into the whole album cover too, and it just like doesn't make sense. Like John was saying, right? The first time you listen to the album, you're like, I don't know if any of this is really making sense. But then, you know, by the second or third listen, it's like, oh, wait a second, I'm listening to something great. And you know, I get up on my soapbox and I talk to my people, and you know, they listen to me because I try really hard not to steer them wrong. You know, I'm not a used car salesman. I don't have a bridge to sell in Brooklyn somewhere or some swampland in the Everglades. So if I tell you something is worth your while, it's the real deal. You know, you don't have to check for wooden nickels at the Prog Corner. But man, how many times have you heard, oh, this is that hidden gem from the 70s, man, right? You've heard it all a million times because you guys are all crate diggers, man. You guys are all looking for that great album that just kind of slipped you by when you were a kid. And then you hear about this mystical great album, you track it down, you finally get it, you put the needle down, and you're like, nah. There's a reason why this band never made it, right? Trust me, you are not going to have that reaction when you buy this record from PQR, Disques Plus Carrel, the reissue of this stuff. This will be that rare moment when everybody's telling you about this great, rare album, and you get it, and you put it on, and you'll actually be like, wow, holy cow, Scott was right again. So that's what we're doing here right now. We're all about pushing the product, and I'm here to tell you, George, you've done a great job. I've looked at the pictures of the product. I can't wait to actually get it in my hands. But thank you to George at PQR, not only for putting this together today, but for reissuing this great album. Thank you, George.
It was a real pleasure working with the band, and I'm sure Mirthrandir fans and newcomers to the prog genre will be equally pleased by the output. It will be available in a couple of weeks. The actual copies we're waiting for the shipment to arrive right now.
Yeah.
So, yep. Pretty soon we'll probably have another session, unwrapping, unpacking, and listening to the actual thing.
There you go. George, you and I will be talking. We'll definitely have to do something for that, a special like an unboxing episode or something. When the product's actually in my hot little hands, that'll be a whole lot of fun. Man, oh man, I am just so happy to have John, Simon, and Bob.
There's a running clock.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you,
any
Scott.
final words, John?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Scott. We really appreciate being here with you and George. And just the hidden gems. I know they're 4-track, but there's some 2 tunes on there that no one's ever heard before.
50 years. It's 50 years.
It'll be very interesting to get the reaction of people.
I can't wait to hear them. I haven't heard it yet, so I'm excited. Simon, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything. Thank you for sending me the original back in October last year. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. I mean, really, it's been an extreme pleasure for us. And with the CD coming out, you know, it's very rough, but there's only our second show.
Right.
So we were not perfect by any stretch. And we did this show at a midnight concert on a Saturday night. So you can imagine, full house, and it was rowdy. But you know, but people behaved long enough for us to get it through. But there, you know, it was a rowdy, just hot night. It was great.
I cannot wait to hear it. All the more reason. There's a lot of value in this package, so it's not just one of those cheap, chintzy reissues where you just get it to have it, or maybe it's a different color gradient. You know how people are about that kind of stuff. Bob, thanks for being on. Any final words for the audience today before we sign off?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whoever's out there that's been a fan since we started, I have to thank them. I mean, to hang in there for 40-something years, you know, it's an incredible tribute to what we did for them. So, and the other thing is, when George first contacted me about this whole thing, you're the first person I thought of. I said to Simon, this guy, Scott, is going to put us into a new millennium. And I knew it. And maybe I thought it into reality.
Yeah, you
But
did.
it worked.
You did a great job.
You made it happen,
out.
Bob. I appreciate that. And, I really appreciate you guys being here with us today, talking about Mirthrandir, the reissue of their debut 1976 album, For You, the Old Women, available May 1st on vinyl on Disques PQR. Thank you. God save the Queen. I love you guys. Peace in the Middle East.